Folks, we're visiting today with Andy Henthorn. He is the owner and founder of Buddy and Beast. It is a pet company, and we're going to learn more about it. Andy, thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Jim.
Yeah, man. When I learned about your business, I was looking forward to talking to you, and I can't wait to jump in.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Positively West Virginia. Positively West Virginia.
Positively West Virginia is powered by Breezeline high-speed fiber internet and sponsored by Highmark West Virginia, Freedom Kia of Morgantown, and Humble Influence. With the help of these sponsors, we're able to share the positive business stories of West Virginians, including the one from today's episode.
Andy, all right, so tell us about your business, Buddy and Beast. What do you do?
So Buddy and Beast is an all-natural dog treat company. We're a manufacturer of dog treats based out of St. Albans, West Virginia. We got started last year when we had a dog that ended up having skin and coat problems. Yeah. And we went to the doctor, and like most pet parents, we got recommended to just put him on a prescription medicine. And it had a lot of adverse health effects. It wasn't natural. It was extremely expensive. And we wanted to see if we could provide a better solution to people in the market. So we went through a few months of research and developed our own treat that was all natural. It was cost effective. And we said, hey, we want to make it and see if other people are interested. So we started selling it back in May, and now we've been in business for almost 4 months and been doing really well out in the Charleston area.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, you know, the inspiration is pretty easy. You had a problem that you wanted to solve for your own self, and now you've got this business. Tell us about your specific products. Like, what are you known for right now?
So right now we're known for two different lines. We have the Buddy Bite and we have the Beast Strip. So the Buddy Bite is a pumpkin peanut butter based treat, and it's all natural, and it sounds really simple, and it's because it is. It's only 8 ingredients. What made us differentiate from a lot of the other products on the market was just because our manufacturing line, we didn't do any cost cutting. So we sourced it all natural from the state. We produced it without any fillers, and that allowed us to differentiate a good bit from other people in the market. But the biggest difference was we added a functional element. So we targeted dogs that have anxiety, targeted dogs with hip and joint issues, and we created SKUs of that Buddy Bites line for them. So we have some that are calming, that allow dogs to naturally relax. We have some for hip and joint issues, which help with mobility problems for older dogs. And we even have one now in our Beast Strips line, which is a chicken jerky base for skin and coat problems. So if a dog is like a short-haired breed where they develop a lot of hot spots or issues with their skin, we have an all-natural solution for them as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm going to go back to what you said about pumpkin. You and I were talking about this before we got started on the interview today, and I didn't even know pumpkin was a thing for dogs. We have 2 teacup chihuahuas, Daisy and Petunia. Daisy and Petunia Matuga, yeah, it's kind of cute, but they, our vet recommended pumpkin, and tell us about like what's the benefit of that?
So pumpkin is really rich in fiber, but more importantly, it helps with overall digestive health. So if you put pumpkin in a dog treat, it helps coats the dog's stomach, so they're able to absorb a lot of the nutrients from the regular dog food. Yeah. So like our treats are not high in protein, but they're rich in fiber. So you can feed the dog the treat, not worry about the weight gain, and it will still absorb a lot of the regular proteins they need from their everyday dog food.
And now, what's the consensus? Do the dogs love them?
They do. Yeah, they eat them up. Now, like chicken jerky is just like unanimous. For some of the ones with our like calm, it's got lavender in it, and you'll see the dogs come up to it and they're like not sure at first because it's not something they regularly eat in their diet. But like I'd say 8 out of 10 dogs always eat the pumpkin and peanut butter, and like almost every dog will eat the chicken jerky.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's very cool. So. We hear the inspiration. We know why you started this company. What's your background? Are you from West Virginia, Andy?
Yeah, so I'm from Charleston, West Virginia. I grew up in St. Albans. I went through St. Albans High School and then went and got nominated for United States Air Force Academy out in Colorado Springs, and found out I had a medical issue and went up back to WVU and started there and stayed there for 4 years, got a degree in economics. Got picked up by Aldi, the grocery chain, and I worked for them as a district manager for 3 years.
That's great.
And then one summer, I wanted to start this business. I had a dog that had a medical issue and wanted to provide a solution for her. So started the business, and now I work for Lowe's in the HR region down in Charleston, and I run this business part-time on the side.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you've got a very successful side hustle going, which is very cool. I want to talk about that in a minute. But you mentioned Aldi and Lowe's, 2 massive global retailers. Yeah. How did that experience, if you will, and a degree in economics prepare you to start a business?
Yeah, I would say in terms of the economics, it gives you a good idea of what causes value production and what causes like businesses to succeed versus failure.
Yeah, can you expand on that? That's very interesting. I want to learn more about that.
So in economics, I think the core of it is, why do businesses survive? And most of the time they try to attribute it to price. But we know that price is such a inconsistent variable for businesses. Some people will charge $600 for a service, other people charge $40. And sometimes the $40 businesses fail and the $600 businesses make it. And you're saying, well, if price is so high for those businesses, how are they surviving and the guy on the lower end's not? And I think the thing they don't just define in economics is value. So when I worked for Aldi, when I saw was really apparent in their industry was they were providing a huge amount of value to their customers that some of the other bigger chains weren't able to provide. So they operate what's considered like a small box compared to like somebody like Walmart, but they were still pulling a huge amount of customers because they targeted very specific niches that they were able to provide more value in by it being all natural. They had better sources for products, higher quality standards than some of the other manufacturers. And when I saw that, I realized that almost all business was based off your ability to produce value for your customer, and the price was just a reflection of that. And once I found that out, I was like, okay, I want to try this. I want to produce something that I think I can create value in. And so I found an issue that I thought was pretty prominent for a lot of people and tried to produce the best product I could. And I think that was a reflection of the business kind of taking off in our first few months was the whole focus on value and letting everything else fall secondary to that.
It's the value proposition.
Yep.
We like to talk about that a lot, as a marketing company. Like, what is the value proposition that you're presenting to your customer, right? The ideal customer. And for every business, it's different. And that's the differentiator, right, is being able to articulate what the value proposition is in a few words. And would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. And I would say a lot of people, especially like younger entrepreneurs, get caught up because if you go on social media, there's like all these 20 people trying to tell you like what makes business work. And I was like, I think there's 3 core foundations of if you can get a good offer, you can market it well, and then you can sell it. If you can do those 3 things well, you're probably going to have a successful business. And the core of an offer is the value proposition.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. You're very wise for a young entrepreneur. So, Andy, I want to talk a little bit about what it's like to have an entrepreneurial venture that is a side hustle, because you have a full-time gig, so to speak, working at Lowe's, but you started this business. Talk about what that means to you and how do you balance all that? How do you get started even?
Yeah. I would say anytime you're starting a side hustle, there's a lot of people that will go for passive income. They try to prioritize that. I think the problem with a lot of passive income is there's inherently not a huge amount of value production in it. Because if it is passive, you're normally the value. And so either you're trying to leverage a tool to provide more value or you yourself are the value. For me, I knew I was going to have a huge amount of time sacrificed to go into the venture. So for me with my regular day job, I work like 50 hours. And so then I'm going to take every evening and every weekend, which is another like 30 hours extraneous from that, and sacrifice that time to invest into the business. And so for me, what I was trying to do is leverage just the mechanics of a manufacturing line. And I said, listen, if I can find the way to produce it, if I can find the customer market, and I can get the initial, amount of money and get a manufacturing line set up, then my time invested drops pretty drastically. And I can then make it almost go back to like a passive income stream. But it was extremely difficult. I found the girl I wanted to marry right as I started my business. And anybody will tell you, they're like, I want all your time. And you're like, no, I have to like finish this business. So she ended up working for me now. So she has her business. She operates my business when I'm at work. And it helped balance a lot of it out. And I had a great support network. And I think that's the key is, if you do have a business that is very time absorbing, to find a really good support network of people who can support you to take the business over while you're not there.
Incredible. Andy, we're going to pick up the conversation in a minute. This is Positively West Virginia. We'll be right back.
Your prescriptions are designed to keep you healthy, active, full of life. At Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield, we're making vital medicine more affordable. Because when your prescriptions don't cost an arm and a leg, you can use those limbs for something more meaningful. Because life. Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield, West Virginia.
Looking for your dream home in West Virginia? Middletown Homes offers high-quality, modular, and manufactured homes designed for your lifestyle. Affordable, beautiful, and built to last. Visit MiddletownHomesWV.com today. Folks, we're visiting with Andy Henthorn. He is with Buddy and Beast, a company out of St. Albans, West Virginia, in Kanawha County. Andy, thanks for being up here in Morgantown today. So I'm very fascinated about the side hustle aspect of this. It is a grind to get and I say that in a positive way, to get a business started. I mean, it's not necessarily difficult, but it takes time and energy, and you got to put the work in. Without a question. And then I think about the passive income. You hear that a lot. Sometimes people talk about real estate as being passive, or maybe it's an Amazon store or an Etsy store or something of that nature, where you're buying commodities and buying and selling and so forth. But it's a lot of work ultimately in the end. But starting a business from scratch, like you did with Buddy and Beast, finding ingredients. Talk about the manufacturing. Now, are you co-packing this with another manufacturer? Did you set up an actual manufacturer? Tell us the story.
We are sadly the manufacturer right now. So the biggest thing that we saw in the value market is if we went and wanted to co-pack. So a lot of people, if you're not in manufacturing, they white label products. So almost the majority of dog products you'll see online or on Amazon right now are co-packaged, which means they went to a factory that already makes dog treats. They said, hey, I have a label, I have a brand. I want you to now make the exact same treat you're making, but with my label. And then they go sell it on Amazon and they market it. The problem is you have a bunch of the exact same product that might be marketed different, but the inherent benefit to the dog is probably the same. And so we said we want to recreate the whole structure of the treat. And when we did that, it's not effective for those lines, because they're like, well, we have a proven treat that works and we sell this to a bunch of businesses to resell. I don't want to change my whole production line for you. You're like some podunk in West Virginia,
because it's costly for them too, right?
Yeah.
They've got to tear everything down and put new ingredients, the whole deal.
And they don't want to go through the proof or research development to try to figure out if it will work. So we said, okay, we'll make our own. So we set up a manufacturing line in Charleston that were operated off one person. And it is the most simple thing when it first started. We had presses that were shaped like paws, and we would sit there and hand press the batter, run it through 2 ovens, run it through 4 dehydrators, and hand bag everything. And that's still right now. We're doing that at a bigger scale, but that is essentially the same process we're using right now.
So it's handmade, hand packaged.
Yep. And that's our biggest difficulty. And the next thing we'll probably jump into as we grow is actually getting more of an automated line. But our plan is to start an actual manufacturing line here in West Virginia. I don't think we'll ever go to co-packing. I want to build something we're able to provide value not only
really cool.
to dogs, but get jobs in West Virginia.
Plus, you're creating manufacturing jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, which is kind of cool. It's not just sales and marketing. It's actually you're creating the product. It's got to be gratifying to be able to do that.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think one of the most undervalued assets that West Virginia holds as a state is its real estate, because it's the most undervalued real estate probably in the whole country right now, other than Mississippi.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about manufacturing, the biggest cost is normally your real estate, because it's such a big square footage that you need to take up. And so when I looked at that, I said, hey, if we can get a really big building and fill it and get a lot of jobs for all these local people, we can leverage the asset and try to increase the property value, but also provide a lot of value for the people that are working in the local region.
It's awesome. I love the wisdom that you're extolling on our audience right now. Thank you, Andy. It's awesome. Very cool insight. So tell us about the name, Buddy and Beast.
So I have 2 Bernedoodles. They're miniatures, and the one is like a sweet angel. They're the same litter. They're sisters, and the one is an absolute like angel. And we were like, this is the best dog ever, and the other is an absolute nightmare. And we were like, how did we get 2 of the same dog, and one is like perfect and one's not?
Yeah.
And when we thought about it, I was like, well, one is like a buddy and one's kind of a beast, and that got the name. But when we thought about it in terms of dogs, like across the board, everybody we talked to, they're like, my dog is sometimes the best thing in the world, and sometimes it's the worst thing in the world. And that's what makes them so great. And I said, hey, I think that's representative of the brand. I think that's representative of what we're trying to go for. So I created the logo, we trademarked it, and now we do art and kind of stylistic T-shirts as well to help sell a lot of the dog treats.
That's very cool. What's your 30-second pitch for Buddy and Beast? When you meet somebody for the first time and they say, hey, Andy, what do you do? What's your company all about?
If I had to do the 30-second elevator pitch, normally it would be we're an all-natural dog producer based out of West Virginia. We focus on functional dog treats to help with common issues in dogs, and we provide it at a cost-effective price. And not only do we do that, we also give back to local dogs in the community, because every time you buy a bag of our product, you also donate a pound of dog food to an animal shelter here in West Virginia.
Amazing.
So we give back
Wow.
a lot of food within the state as well.
Yeah. So where are your customers coming from these days? You started the company back in 2024, but really you're getting up to speed.
Yeah, so right now we've mainly sold out of that Charleston region, but we started getting clients out of Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia. We sold to a few people in Maine. So we do spend $0 on advertising right now. It is all word of mouth sales.
Yeah.
And it's really fascinating to just see how far it's spread just from word of mouth. And we're hoping in the next phase that we'll get some advertising and see how it spreads across outside of West Virginia.
Yeah. How do people buy the product? Is it in stores? Is it online only? Talk about the distribution method.
Yeah, so right now we sell through in-person events, we sell online, and we also have people who buy wholesale and sell at their place of business. So they're sold in the Tamarack, they're sold at a few dog groomers out in Charleston.
All right.
And our goal is to keep trying to expand that way.
Keep expanding it, yeah. So you mentioned the events. Like, what kind of events? Are you going to, like, craft shows? Because I know a lot of entrepreneurs who start businesses, like manufacturing, small manufacturing, they'll do these craft shows. Is that what you're doing?
Yep. Yeah, so we do every kind of show. We've done car shows, we've done craft shows, I've done regular state fair shows. We were at the state fair a few weeks ago, and we didn't even have to show up. They said, just give us your product and we'll sell it for you, out of West Virginia Agriculture. And we were like, yeah, done deal. So we sent them like 80 bags, and I said, they're not going to sell it all. And they called us in the first week and said, hey, we sold out of your product. You need to send us more. So we've had a huge success in just like sending it to shows and listening to the customer feedback and improving from that.
Yeah.
And if I had any advice for anybody who is trying to start a business, especially in a goods-based, I would say get as much feedback as you can from your customers. And at craft shows, they are brutally honest, especially in small regions, because they will find you.
That's awesome. Well, that's awesome, and I love it's almost like guerrilla tactics, like GUERILLA, guerrilla marketing, getting out amongst the people and hearing what they have to say, getting that feedback. It's amazing. How many employees do you have?
Currently have 2 people. I have one person who bakes and then one person who runs the day-to-day operations.
Yeah.
So I generally will try to get contracts for people that want to sell the product or people that are interested in trying to distribute. I then send it over to my operations manager. She runs out and will basically go through the meeting and say, hey, how much do you want to buy? When do you want the shipping times? She'll deliver products. She delivers samples. And then I have one person who bakes everything and packages it. And then we work as a team. We meet together on the weekends, and we sell through shows normally from Friday to Sunday. I just got back from a show I sold at the Pumpkin Fair in Milton. And sold for 3 days straight. And we were up until 1 a.m. every night because we kept selling out every day. And we'd have to make more and then show up the next morning and sell again.
That's incredible. That's great. I love it. This is Positively West Virginia. We'll be right back. Stay connected with an unbeatable deal from Breezeline. Voted best in Mountaineer Country for their reliable, high-speed fiber internet for a low cost, Breezeline is the best gig in town. You know, here at InnerAction Media, we rely on high-speed internet every single day to ensure we can deliver the best content possible for our clients and when we publish Positively West Virginia each week. That's why we use Breezeline. It's affordable, fast, and they're great people as well. Learn more about Breezeline's internet, TV, and mobile options at breezeline.com. In a world obsessed with leadership, what if the real key to success is followership? We hear it all the time. Be a leader, take charge. But what if the most impactful people aren't the ones leading from the front? In Humble Influence, I explore how humility, collaboration, and shared purpose empower followers to create meaningful change in business, organizations, and relationships. Discover the strength of true followership with Humble Influence. Folks, we're back. We're visiting with Andy Henthorn. He is the founder and owner of Buddy and Beast. They are just an amazing company based out of St. Albans, West Virginia, creating dog treats that are just very special for the pets and the dog community here in West Virginia and across the country now, getting up and running. Andy, we had some guests a couple of years ago, Pause Up. They're here in West Virginia. They won a business plan competition and won some funding and everything. And they created a microfiber cleaning cloth for dogs' paws called Pause Up. I was curious, are you involved with any business plan competitions or going after any kind of grant money or awards that are out there here in West Virginia?
Yeah, and there's a huge amount of opportunity in West Virginia in grant funding. And we got hooked up with Ann Jones at the Launch Lab, the Hayhurst Launch Lab here in Morgantown.
Yeah, of course.
And started talking to her, and she said, hey, I think you should go and apply. And I was like, listen, we just started. Like, we're probably not worth anything at the moment.
You're perfect
she said,
to do it, yeah.
Go try it.
That's amazing.
And we went through the application process and became a semifinalist, and then last week found out we were a finalist. So we're going to pitch in November to try to win $100,000, which we'll reinvest into getting the equipment for our business to start an actual manufacturing line in Charleston.
That's amazing. I mean, and if I was on that panel and I was a judge or a decision maker, I would definitely be funding Buddy and Beast, because you're a smart guy, number one. And you've got integrity, number two, and you're doing a really cool product. You're creating something that's adding value.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Andy, you mentioned West Virginia is an opportunity state, really. You mentioned real estate. It's a bargain. What about West Virginia and doing business here? Does anything surprise you, or something that's positive that you can maybe share with our listeners about doing business here in West Virginia?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we have going against us is a lot of people look at statistics when they look at West Virginia, and statistically we don't look too promising for business. Yeah. We have a declining population. A lot of times when you're looking at us compared to other states, we're one of the lowest in GDP, and they see that and they're kind of scared. They're like, I'm not sure I want to invest money into West Virginia. And I think the thing they don't realize is because of that, you have a huge ability to add value in the state. You have real estate that's very cost effective right now. You have a lot of people that are looking for work that are willing and have a lot of years of experience that are able to provide value. They're just trying to work for a business that wants to invest back into the community. And I think the biggest thing that comes unrealized is the culture here in West Virginia is so proactive about helping people within the state. And so I went out to a leadership event in California, and I told everybody, I was like, I'm going to start a business. And they were like, everybody's going to tear you down. They're going to crush you, dude. Like, everybody's like in your local area is going to jump on and start trying to make these treats and compete with you. And I went in and I was kind of nervous, and I started the line, and within 2 months I had people showing up and saying like, how can we support you? And I was like, for what cost? And they're like, we just want to help you. Like, we want to help you grow. We want to make it sure that you can succeed here in the state. They were trying to provide grant funding. I had people calling me just to say, I have a connection who might be able to get you something else, and we can work out a good deal. And that was something that nobody's going to mention on a statistic sheet. And it's just something I think that's inherent to this area and to the people here, that they want to help you and make sure you succeed. And in almost all the other states, I don't think that's the mentality. And here it truly is. I think it's one of our most unrecognized assets that we have for the state is the people here.
Andy, I couldn't agree with you more. I talk about that a lot. West Virginia is a beautiful state, and we have just amazing places to go and see. Most every state has that. But what I think our differentiating value proposition is our people. And one of the reasons is what you just described. I find that support to be very, very universal amongst people here. And I'm getting ready to start my 15th year of business right now, and I love it. Yeah, and it's just been amazing. Like the support that you get. People want to. I think they kind of root for the underdog. Like they're WVU fans and Marshall fans, and they kind of know that we're always underdogs. It seems, and so I feel like that's part of us. What's one of the most interesting things you've seen in the business world since you started your company?
Probably one of the more interesting things I got to see was I watched some of the other entrepreneurs that are in some of the pitch competitions I'm in start and go out, and they'll start with a product, and like there's a guy that's competing against me in the Hayhurst, and his name's Logan. He has a product called Best Damn Tape.
Logan Kuvo, he's been on the show.
He's awesome. And I watched him on LinkedIn, and before I even started my business, I watched him, and I watched it, and I looked at my fiance, and I was like, that's got to be brutal trying to start a tape company. And I just watched him take off. And there was all these people that were like, hey, like, how can we help you and support you? And he just kept growing and going. And he's a grinder. Like, he will give it all. And I saw him, and I was like, okay. I was like, I think you can do it. Like, I think anybody can do it.
Yeah.
And I went into it, found kind of the same pathway of so many people just trying to push you up to the top. And I think overall the best thing with business is they talk about the risk, but they don't talk about kind of the excitement and the joy of getting to work with people and provide value into the community. And that's something that, you know, they always talk about money as the attributing factor of wanting success, but I think the other half that people don't recognize, which is more fulfilling, is getting to help as many people as you can through the jobs and just also the product that you're able to provide.
Yeah, that's excellent. I appreciate that. You mentioned, you know, word of mouth is your best marketing tool. Do you use other channels to get the word out there? Do you have social media? How do you attract new business?
Yeah, so we have Facebook, we have Instagram. In all honesty, we have not used it effectively, primarily because we can't even meet the current demand. So we're focused so much on production, we can't even move to the idea of scaling on social.
You've got a demand for sure.
Yeah, and so right now we've really leaned on the word of mouth sales because that's fulfilled our manufacturing. We are at max capacity for what we're able to make. And so we're at the point where now we're just trying to go into that next step of investment to get the manufacturing equipment to produce more units, so then we can redistribute our focus back into marketing and expanding.
In terms of the, you know, growing the business, you know, long term, what's the highest challenge you're facing? The highest level challenge you're facing?
The highest level challenge we're facing right now is production. So the real estate is not as much of an issue as the equipment. So the equipment, for what we do, a lot of it's pretty generalized, but the one that's not is actually the stamper that makes the treats. There's only like 2 people in the whole U.S. that make those things. And so it's actually been quite a chore just finding that one piece of equipment. So we structured the whole line. We thought we were good to go. And then they were like, hey, how are you going to stamp the treats? And I was like, yeah, that's a great question. And then that ended up being the thing that got us caught up right now. So it's funny because the pieces of equipment are you know, they're pretty pricey just because they are such of a big scale. But the one time you have to build a custom piece of equipment, that one unit machine will cost the whole price as the others just because it's custom. And that was something we didn't expect coming in. And that's kind of our next hurdle is getting the money to pay for the equipment. And then we should be on to it.
Is that something that as you are able to stamp the product and create the template, I guess, or the shape of it, is that something you can trademark or patent or something like that? No, you know, how do you do that? Protect your intellectual property?
Yeah, so our actual brand is trademarked, and so the stamp is reflective of the brand, so it falls under copyright. Yeah. In terms of the machine is not revolutionary. It's the same idea as like a press or a roller that they use in other industries. The difference is because we make the treats off a batter and not off a filling paste that meets like a cone, we have to do it a bit different way. And there's other people who do it, but they use such big lines that they say, you know, $50,000 for them to spend on a machine. They're like, yeah, whatever. We're going to make $1 million off these treats. Doesn't matter to us. For us, we were like, hey, we just need to switch out this rotary die. And they were like, yeah, that's going to cost you. And so that's been the biggest thing is when you're trying to compete against some of the giant industries, you have to pay giant cost. And that just is what it is. It's something we had to accept, but it's definitely not something we thought about coming into it.
It's almost a barrier to entry, you know, in a sense.
Yeah, and I think the hardest part with manufacturing is the moment you hit that thing where you go into large scale, where you're trying to compete at a wholesale level, is you suddenly have to pay wholesale prices, and there is a huge glass ceiling that you don't realize until you get up to it, and you go to pay for the equipment, and you recognize that, okay, that's why they're at such a huge scale, is because the equipment is so costly.
That's why they're co-packing.
Yeah, that's why they're co-packing.
That's cool. So what's the vision for your company, Buddy and Beast, long term?
I want to get to the point where we're distributed in every Walmart, Lowe's. I want to be in every wholesale place around the country. I kind of want it to be recognized as the dog treat from West Virginia that's made in West Virginia, here in the U.S., sourced from the state, and that gets distributed out across the country. And I want it to be a reflection to really everybody in West Virginia, like, hey, we started here, we made it here, and we took it across the country. That's my end goal.
Yeah, I love it. That's fantastic. It's a very clear vision. I saw it. There's no doubt, Andy, that you're gonna do exactly what you just said, and you're gonna achieve those goals. I love the vision that you have. Anytime I have a business leader across the table from me, I'm going to ask a leadership question because I'm a student of leadership. Okay. What do you think is the most important attribute of a successful business leader today?
I think now it's the ability to ask questions continuously. I think because we have so much information, we have ChatGPT, we have all these educational resources, sometimes we get the false sense that we feel we know it all. And the biggest differentiator I found between the people that are extremely successful and only partially successful is at some point they stopped asking questions. They stopped thinking they were the best, and they just went into every conversation being like, okay, I know nothing, and I'm going to ask you as much as I can find out. And the people that I've known that have done that just continue to grow well past their years of experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's being curious, basically, is what you're saying, and having that curiosity of, how is this made? How can I grow? How what does this mold cost me, or this press, or whatever, the die? I don't even know what you're calling it, but all those things. Something, as you were talking about this, it kind of goes back to what you were originally talking about early on, the products that you sell. You mentioned you had several SKUs. How did you learn about that? Like, how did you learn about creating different SKUs or barcodes and product lines? How did you learn that aspect of the business?
We found it out by looking at a lot of the competitors that we were competing against. So we kind of went on Amazon and just did a general search, and we said, okay, this is one of the biggest manufacturing lines that we're wanting to compete against. What are they doing, and how can we improve on their processes? And so we just did a breakdown. We just sat and I searched for months and figured out, what are they putting into the product? How are they making it? What is their probably estimated cost of production? Who are they getting it produced by? And just tried to ask as many questions about what was making them successful, and then how we could add value on top of that. And then we took it to a lot of our competitors, and we did the same thing when we went to the shows. We would say, hey, what are you doing that makes you feel like you can sell product well in candy? What is making you feel like you can sell product at this show?
Really?
What shows do you find are successful? And the amount that people will just tell you, they're like, oh yeah, this is what we think does really well.
Again, ask questions continuously is what you said.
Yeah,
right?
and it can be for everything. I think a lot of people get stuck because they say, I'm only going to ask questions that apply to me. And sometimes it's beneficial just to ask questions because that person has a group of knowledge that might apply to you and you just don't know it yet. I worked in a medical laboratory, which I did drug testing, which has nothing to do with dog treats. But the owner came in one day and I just asked him, I was like, hey, what's your biggest ability to do customer acquisition? And he was like, have you ever just had the customers recommend the other customers that have a similar problem? And I was like, yeah, that's pretty clever. and it wasn't in my space. Like, if I asked him a dog treat specific question, he would have been able to probably not provide a huge amount of value in that realm.
Yeah.
But everybody always has something that they're a master at. And I thought that was a beneficial takeaway for me, is just to keep deep diving.
Yeah, I think that's really cool and very smart of how you're approaching this whole thing. Andy, what's one piece of advice you would give to somebody here in West Virginia thinking about starting a business?
I think the biggest thing I would tell anybody is test your market as much as possible before jumping in. I think the biggest risk most people take is they save up, for 5-10 years, and they say, okay, I have this business, I know this is what I want to do, but they didn't test the market to ensure its validity. And I think the easiest thing to do is, if you want to go make makeup, go out there, go to who you think your core clients are, test it at the smallest scale possible with the least amount of money to see if they're wanting to benefit from it. Yeah. And if people think, hey, that's a huge value add and we want to buy this, then scale it from there. But I think a lot of people jump way too big, way too soon without testing the market, and that ends in a lot of the businesses' failures we see today. And I think if people just mitigated the risk and tested smaller rather than going to the highest point fast, you'd see a lot more businesses make it 5, 10, 15 years down the line.
I think especially with a side hustle, Andy, and maybe you'll agree with this, maybe you won't, but I use this analogy of the boat getting close to the dock. You're standing on the dock, the boat's getting ready to leave. Do you want to step onto the boat? Do you want to jump onto the boat? Do you want to wait till the boat sails and then you jump into the water and get all wet and possibly drown or something? So, having a side hustle enables you to put a foot on the boat while keeping a foot on the dock and kind of testing those waters. I'm curious, because I love the advice you just gave. I mean, it's fantastic advice for testing the market. Were you able to do that, and are you still doing that today? Or in other words, you have a product, you go out and you maybe give a couple of samples out and get some feedback. Hey, what are you thinking? What's the dog? Does the dog like it? Those kinds of things.
Yeah, 100%. What we do right now is we go out. So, like, if I sell somebody a bag of our regular Buddy Bites, and I say, "Hey, what issues do your dog have?" And they say, "Well, we have an issue, but you're not addressing it right now." And if it falls into a line of products that we thought was going to be beneficial, we want to test, I'll say, "Okay, we're going to make a custom batch just for you, and I want to give it to you free at cost. We'll give you a deal on the bites you're already buying since you're helping us out. And can you give it to your dog and tell us the feedback?" And we'll, most of the time, not only will they feel loyal to want to buy it if the product does eventually come out, it makes them extremely loyal to the product they're already currently buying because they feel like they're a part of the process. And we've done that with a few lines now. So we did that with our hip and joint line. I went to everybody who was buying our Buddy Bites. I said, "Hey, are any of your dogs having mobility issues?" And like a third of them were like, "Yeah, my dog does have mobility issues." So we sent them the treats. I said, "Hey, we're going to give you the regular treats you're already buying at half the cost. I'm going to give you this free bag of treats. Give us your feedback." They'd give us their feedback. We'd go through. We, probably innovated on that cycle 3 editions before we said, "Okay, this is a good final product." We sent it to market, and then we already had our customers willing to buy from us. And then they, a lot of times, went to promote to their other friends because they said, "I tested that product. Like, I know this works." And they were really loyal to the brand because of it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. A couple of things that come to mind based on our conversation. You talked about some of the businesses that aren't, they sit on an idea for 2 or 3 years, saving their money, and they launch this thing and it fails because they haven't gotten feedback or buy-in or market research and testing the market, so to speak. Oftentimes those businesses they've got this solution that they've fallen in love with, this product, but they haven't really addressed the problem. And one of the things that I like to say to people is that you got to fall in love with the problem first.
Yeah.
Find the problem, which is what you did. You had a dog, or two. Was it 2 dogs you had?
I had
one dog.
The one dog, actually, my dog's name was Daisy too.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, my first dog was kind of the inspiration from the problem.
Yeah.
Now I have 2 dogs.
Yeah. So Daisy, was having some issues, and you created a solution to her problem. So you fell in love with the problem first, and I feel like that is a core function of a business. Is if you have this genius idea, there's hardly any genius ideas that haven't been thought of before, right? Yeah. You think, "Oh, I got this great thing," but if you listen to the customer, you solve for the problem first, fall in love with the problem, then your solution will be a lot more accepted, a lot easier to accept from the customer. And then the second thing is, when you were talking about scaling, I feel like a lot of times, and I've seen this myself even when scaling my business, is that a lot of companies, they burn through their cash, and cash is very important. And what happens is, especially over a long-term business, is that you get out of the gate, you're running pretty good, and then your expenses, i.e. payroll, which is like most companies' largest expense is their payroll. Yep. Their payroll, you got to pay your people more because they've been with you now for 4 or 5 years, 6 years, and that payroll line's going north, right? And if your revenues aren't equally matching that or exceeding it, then you can't keep up. And that's where a lot of businesses fail as they're trying to scale and ramp up. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that. Those maybe 1 or 2 of those thoughts.
Yeah, I think, so going back to the first point, which is capital going out the gate, most people do not realize the ability you have to leverage capital if you have hard cash.
That's right.
So like private equity, most people don't recognize that most of the guys that jump into private equity and own $1 million businesses start with like 1/10 of that amount, and they leverage it at a huge rate to scale and to acquire businesses. So if you're starting a business and you think, "I'm going to pay all of this outright with the cash in my pocket," don't. Like, I did that. I mean, like, I can say this as a person who was guilty of it. I walked in with $40,000. I said, "I'm going to leverage this all out of pocket." And halfway through, I was like looking around, and I was like, "Hey, how are you guys doing 10 times what I'm doing?" And I don't feel like you had more money than me when we started this. And they were like, "Oh, we just like leveraged it. Like, we went to the bank, and then we got equity, and then we they financed and did all this stuff." And I was like, "I just paid for things with my bank account. Like, I never thought of that." And I wish if I could go back 1 year and say anything about leveraging capital is get your capital as much as you can, recognize how to leverage it, and then apply it the best ways you think possible for your business. Yeah. But to the second part of payroll is 100%, 50% of all the costs, even for my business. When you're looking down the line and when you're trying to determine margin, the banking gets a little funny with finance guys because they'll throw in all the terms of like, "Hey, like, what's your overall net operating cost, and like, what are you going to end at margin?" And I was like, I think the simple way to do it is, how much does it cost in just basic goods, add on your labor, what do you have left? And if that amount left only pays you and doesn't pay your ability to market and scale to the next stage, your business might stagnate. And so I think a lot of times people get too focused on profit and loss, and they don't focus enough on, do I have enough marginal capital left over that's able to scale me to the next growth? And am I okay maybe setting aside my capital that's supposed to go to me to invest back into the business to help it grow to the next stage to keep getting more income?
Because it's an investment in yourself at that point, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. Andy, we've covered a lot in this interview. Is there anything else you think our listeners should know about Andy Henthorn or Buddy and Beast that we haven't covered?
I would say the only thing, and I think we've touched on this a few times, is just if you're going to start a business, and it doesn't matter if you're older, younger, I think anybody who's starting a business, the best thing to go forward and look at is, can we go through and create a product that's worthwhile? And as you mentioned, can we go through and recognize the audience who we're trying to apply that to and get as much information as possible? I think we're in the most information-rich society we've ever been. I think we have a huge amount of people right now that have capital they're wanting to invest. And so I think the thing that it goes down to on whether or not a business starts right now is execution. And I think, especially for people in my age group, there seems to be this huge gap between people who want to execute and the people who do execute. And it's a very small margin that tends to go over to that execution side. And if I could go to everybody in the world and say, like, what's the biggest problem we're trying to solve right now, is how to motivate more people to go from that ledge of should I go do it to doing it. And I'm not sure how we bridge that gap. I think it's a very complex problem that we could probably sit and talk for many days on. But
I think so too. Yeah.
I would hope if somebody's out there and there's a problem that we can solve now, I think the next thing for most entrepreneurs, especially in the state of West Virginia, is how do we get a lot of the people now to jump into the execution stage of starting businesses.
Yeah, just do it.
Yep, just do it.
I love it, Andy. That's great stuff, man. Our guest once again is Andy Henthorn. He's the founder and owner of Buddy and Beast out of St. Albans, West Virginia. Andy, I mean, honestly, it has been an honor to have you on the show. You're a smart guy. You've got a great heart, and I love what you're doing. And I just want to encourage you to keep up the great work that you're doing, especially in the pet space.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you so much for having people like me on the show to talk about business in West Virginia. I think you're inspiring a huge amount of entrepreneurs, not just hopefully in the state, but maybe bringing people into West Virginia to invest their money here and try to start businesses in the local economy.
Yeah, that's the goal,
Hope
Andy.
It keeps growing.
You're awesome, man. I've enjoyed our conversation, and I'm sure our audience has too. Folks, that's a wrap on another episode of Positively West Virginia. If you or someone you know would be a great guest on our show, drop us a line on our website at positivelywv.com. And of course, we appreciate your feedback, sharing these episodes of those like Andy Henthorn and Buddy and Beast, and just really, we appreciate the encouragement along the way as well. On behalf of our entire Positively West Virginia team, including our producer today, Mr. Jimmy Murray, I'm your host, Jim Matuga. Stay positive, West Virginia.
We'd like to thank our partners, Highmark West Virginia, Freedom Kia of Morgantown, InnerAction Media, Humble Influence, and our studio sponsor, Breezeline, for helping to share these positive stories. If you'd like to become a sponsor of the Positively West Virginia podcast, visit positivelywv.com/sponsor.